So I'm going to figure that we are live, and I would like to call this meeting of the Lunenburg School Committee to order. It is March 7th, I believe, 8th. Somebody help me with the date.
March 8th.
Thank you. It is March 8th. When you're retired, you don't have to pay attention. It is March 8th, and we are meeting via Zoom. And I don't have the capability of reading the thing that I'm supposed to read. So I am going to say that this is a Zoom meeting and all effort has been made so that the public knows we are meeting. And the Zoom ID number this evening is 766-316-7607. However, I anticipate that if you're listening to us, you know that. So we will continue on. Our first and only matter of business this evening is the first read of the transportation policy. And I'm going to explain what I did. So,
Hey, Carol,
yes.
before you get into that, I know we're being broadcast, but Zoom is not recording. I might suggest that we, as a backup, record from Zoom, if that's possible. There we go. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that was a very good point, and I appreciate that. So what I did was I looked at the transportation policy, both iterations from the policy committee. I looked at the transportation policy that Mr. Beardmore had submitted. And the third one that mysteriously appeared today was my attempt to marry those policies, basically to take the organization from Peters and most of the language from the policy committee and put what I thought was a document that was more streamlined and was going to work for us. There are a lot of procedure things that really did not need to be in the policy, but had to be somewhere. And that was the procedure handbook, whatever they called it, procedure document, transportation procedure document that Kate put in the file as well. Because the thing is, if something glitchy goes on and we may not be able to call a policy meeting to do something small, like if the email server goes down on May 1st and we have to extend a date, or if if something strange goes on anyways, if we find something isn't working, the procedures themselves, if they are in the policy, become very difficult to change. I did think everybody's intent was the same. When I looked at all these policies, it looked to me like the intent was the same. So I don't know how you want to go around doing this. I don't know if you want to start with mine and go through that one and then go back, or I will take suggestions. Mr. Beardmore?
Yes. So, Carol, first of all, thank you for doing the work that you did. When I read the draft that came out on Friday, I found the order to be difficult, and there to be some statements in there that could have been perceived as conflicting as we kind of laid out the pre-K, the K through 6, and the 7 through 12 categories. And I think that your document satisfies the overwhelming majority of the issues that I have. So my suggestion would be that the first reading be your document, your latest revision document that you've circulated. I do have a question though, procedurally, I guess, which is by creating a policy and then a procedure, my interpretation is that the procedure is now a draft or not final or subject to change so long as it lives within the metes and bounds of the policy.
Mm-hmm.
Is that everybody else's interpretation as well?
That would be what I would think. It's similar to what we did with the concession stand.
Okay.
Uh,
Because I do think that the procedure needs a little work. There's still a statement in there around the 2-week inquiry cycle and that kind of thing that is not caught up with the policy. There's just a couple of really minor issues, but so long as we're not under the gun on the procedure like we are on the policy, I think that we can handle that.
As far as I know, that if we were to approve a policy, that does not mean that the procedure is set in stone. Brian?
Yeah, I would agree. From experience with MASC, the presentations by the representatives there, a lot of it, from what I reiterate, is just that we set policy, and then the administration has to follow through with that and set procedures and do the work that follows the policy. I would also agree, Carol, that was great. I appreciated the revisions. I thought it definitely was an improvement, and I support that as a first read. I also appreciate Peter's work and making recommendations. It's always good to get feedback from everybody and try to make a better document as well. So I think we had some good progress here.
Okay, anything, Tony, any thoughts on this? You're okay with this? Laura?
No, I'm similar to what Brian just said. I think that the feedback from both Carol and Peter, I thought that was great. Tony and I did a stellar job with the first run, but I'm just kidding. I think, Carol, you really did a great job putting it together at the end of taking everyone's. I do think that.
Well, and I think it's important to take the policy from the policy committee and have that be the backbone of it. That was, and the work done by the policy committee, because we were all over the place.
Right.
So just trying to corral it at all was a job and a half.
Well, you did a great job corralling it all at the end.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. In my half an hour I had this morning. Okay. So, so what I would do then, I would suggest, if everyone is in agreement, which it appears that people are, that we take this as a first read. I'm happy to read it, or someone else can read it. I don't care. Okay, I'll read it then. So actually, wait a minute. I don't, because I am not at home, I do not have access.
I have it in front of me. I have it in front of me.
I have it in front of me, but I don't have the fiscal management, all the numbers.
Okay, I could read those if you want.
Yeah, if you want to read those, then you can just read it because you have it in front of you. And I added something and that didn't end up on my printout. So I think maybe you should read it.
Oh, I don't think it does have the numbers on it.
No, mine doesn't. I have the numbers on. You know what we're going to do? I will read the numbers because I have them from the policy committee. So I will read the numbers and then.
Yeah, it's on the original. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you read the rest of it. How's that?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. I can read it too. I think I have it here. So fiscal management and non-instructional operations, 3,000, transportation, 3,600, transportation duties and responsibilities of the school committee. The purpose of the transportation is to get pupils from home to school and back in an efficient, safe, and economical manner. Other purposes include the provision of transportation for academic field trips in direct support of the curriculum, transportation for the support of the co-curriculum program, athletics, music, drama, and the like. The Lunenburg Public Schools does not provide transportation for preschool students unless this service is required by the student's individualized educational plan, IEP. Pursuant to the state law and regulation of all students K-6 living more than 2 miles from school are entitled to busing. Lunenburg Public Schools will bus all K-6 students upon submission of a transportation form. State law does not require busing of students grades 7 through 12, but the Lunenburg Public Schools will bus these students based on space availability and the submission of a transportation form. Transportation form. Families wishing for their students to be bused shall submit a transportation form for each student seeking busing by the deadline date, May 1st. Failure to submit a transportation form by the deadline will result in the student being placed on a waiting list in order of receipt. Because of the complexity of bus routes, students on the waiting list may be assigned a bus seat up to 60 business days following the late transportation form submission. Families should not expect a wait list update more frequently than bi-weekly. Should the number of transportation forms exceed the number of available seats, the district will determine bus assignment based on the date and time of transportation form submission. Transportation forms received for new students moving into the district after the May 1st deadline, but at the time of student registration shall be considered without penalty or delay based on availability of bus seats. Additional procedural details will be found in the Lunenburg Public Schools transportation form procedure available on the district website. Emergency transportation forms in the event of a newly arising condition that necessitates busing of a student after the transportation form deadline. The district shall consider such transportation forms in their sole discretion. Outreach. The school district, based on known need, shall conduct individual outreach to families that may be unable to complete the transportation form. Finality of decisions. All transportation form decisions by the school district are final. Conflict and severability. Nothing in the policy shall be interpreted as conflicting with the state, federal law or regulations. In the event that some provision of the policy is deemed unlawful, all or other provisions shall be given their full force and effect. It was approved April 27th, 2005, updated.
Okay. Any discussion on the transportation policy then?
So that last paragraph, I believe it should say state or federal law or regulations.
Up
It says
part
of,
of,
instead
yeah,
of, it
well,
should be or.
that is a typo. Yes, thank you.
That was the only thing I saw.
Also, there's also a missing closed parenthetical in the first paragraph.
Oh, that's what happens when you write things quickly.
That's all right.
Okay, there we go. Anything else?
See, oh, Tony's gonna say.
Tony?
I generally prefer the phrase once every 2 weeks as opposed to bi-weekly. Bi-weekly is like flammable and inflammable. Like everyone thinks they know what that means, but when you ask people, they're not exactly sure if they have the same definition as somebody else. So just a little thing. That's the only change I would make.
I'm fine with that change, that if that's clearer. Is everybody else okay with that change? 1 every 2 weeks or bi-weekly?
Yes, yeah. I think biannually is the same issue. It's like, is it twice a year? Is it every other year?
2 years?
I'm
Okay,
pretty sure it's correct in this document, but I understand the point.
Yeah.
I know that this is technically correct, but I just want to raise it just to be sure. Should the number of transportation forms exceed the number of available seats, the district will determine bus assignment based on the date and time of transportation form submission. So I actually have 2 issues with this paragraph. The first is, I'm wondering if we should change the first transportation form to applicants. But I'm not 100% sure of that because families with multiple kids, you could have one applicant, and so I'm not sure on that. But it seems to me that we should be. What we're trying to do is compare the number of kids to seats, not necessarily the number of forms to seats, in my mind. And I know that it's really splitting hairs. The second issue that I had on this was actually this was the crux of the issue that I had on the document that was circulated last Friday, which is, I think that what we've said above is that we're transporting all kids K through 6.
Mhm.
That there's a priorities in in order of merit or first come first serve or whatever for 7 through 12. But this paragraph does not specify that. It would lead the reader to believe that it applies to all forms, which we're treating these 2 categories somewhat differently. And I'm a little bit concerned about that.
I see what you mean. So if we took that paragraph that you're talking about and say, should the number of applicants grades 7 to 12 exceed the number of available seats?
That would solve the problem for me.
That, Brian, what do you think? You look like you're,
Yeah, that's fine.
that okay? So the change would be in that paragraph would then read, should the number of applicants exceed the number of sorry, I didn't write it down. Should the number of applicants grades 7 to 12 exceed the number of available seats, the district will determine bus assignment based on the date and time of application. Is that clear?
Yes.
You could also just say first come, first serve. I mean, if you have a phrase that has a commonly understood meaning, there's no reason why we shouldn't avail ourselves of that commonly understood meaning in the form instead of like more complex language.
So if you did that, the language then would say the district will determine bus assignment based on a first come, first served basis.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows what that means and it's clear.
I think it would have to be clear that it also is the grade 7 to 12.
Yeah, we'd have to-
Oh, yeah,
Right.
you'd have to put that
Yep.
in there, that paragraph.
I'm
Based
fine with that too.
on. All right, so what did we say? The district will determine bus assignment on a first come, first serve basis. Anything else? Do we have to reread this? Is there enough change that we need to reread it? I don't think the intent has changed, but
Not at all.
Dr. Burnham, are you okay with us not rereading that?
I think just to be clear for everybody watching or who will be watching the recording, I think it's worth a final read with the edits.
I would agree with you. And we had some people join us after we started reading the first read, so they didn't get the whole gist of the first read. So, see, I don't have in front of me the adjustments made and read on the policy I wrote, so I can't read them because.
If you
I would-
give me 1 second, I will try to edit, make a new copy and edit at the recommendations that we just discussed. If you give me a second, and then I can pull it up on screen so everybody can see it.
Okay, will that work?
Yeah.
Or where your camera doesn't work? That's a different device?
Oh, that's right. But Liz Peterson's on the meeting. She has access to the folder and she can share it.
Okay. That'll work.
We're bound
Yeah,
and determined to get this done tonight.
Yes, we are bound and determined to get this done tonight. And I definitely appreciate everybody's flexibility with all of this, trying to get this figured out. And while we're waiting for that, I would just say, for the benefit of the parents that have joined us, that this is a first read of the policy. And that when we do make a second read, people will be able to comment before we do the second read. And also, if there is something in this policy, we have public comment after this section, you'll be welcome to do comment then. And also, you can email the superintendent or her office to make comments before the second read. Because I know this is feeling rushed, but we've been working on this for quite a while.
All right, so in the folder, the meeting folder, everyone should now see a copy of alternate proposal 3, transportation. Do you all see that in your folder?
Yes, ma'am.
I can't access right now, so.
Now,
I don't
we'll
that.
change the fonts so that it all matches, but the
Sure.
critical information has been dropped in relative to the policy numbering and so forth, so. Thank you, Liz, for screen sharing.
Thank you very much. So can, Brian, do you want to take another run at that?
Sure. Fiscal management and non-instructional operations, 3,000. Transportation, 3,600. Transportation duties and responsibilities of the school committee, 3,601. The purpose of the school transportation is to get pupils from home to school and back in an efficient, safe, and economical manner. Other purposes include the provision of transportation for academic field trips and direct support of the curriculum, transportation for the support of the co-curricular program, athletics, music, drama, and the like. The Lunenburg Public Schools does not provide transportation for preschool students unless this service is required by the student's individualized educational plan, IEP. Pursuant to state law and regulations, all students K through 6 living more than 2 miles from school are entitled to busing. The Lunenburg Public Schools will bus all K through 6 students upon submission of a transportation form. State law does not require busing of students grades 7 through 12, but the Lunenburg Public Schools will bus these students based on space availability and the submission of a transportation form. Transportation form. Families wishing for their students to be bused shall submit a transportation form for each student seeking busing by the deadline date, May 1st. Failure to submit a transportation form by the deadline will result in the student being placed on a waiting list in order of receipt. Because of the complexity of bus routes, students on the waiting list may be assigned a bus seat up to 60 business days following the late transportation form submission. Families should not expect a wait list update more frequently than bi-weekly. Should the number of grades 7 through 12 applicants exceed the number of available seats, the district will determine bus assignment first come, first served basis. Transportation forms received for new students moving into the district after the May 1st deadline, but at the time of student registration shall be considered without penalty or delay based on availability of bus seats. Additional procedural details will be found in the Lunenburg Public Schools transportation form procedure available on the district website. Emergency transportation forms in the event of a newly arising condition that necessitates busing of a student after the transportation form deadline. The district shall consider such transportation forms in their sole discretion. Outreach. The school district, based on known need, shall conduct individual outreach to families that may be unable to complete the transportation form. Finality of decisions. All transportation form decisions by the school district are final. Conflict and severability. Nothing in the policy shall be interpreted as conflicting with the state or federal law or regulations. In the event that some provision of the policy is deemed unlawful, all other provisions shall be given their full force and effect.
Thank you, Brian. We had just changed the bi-weekly to once every 2 weeks. That doesn't
So-
change. anything.
Yep,
I
so
don't
I'm,
think we have to
right,
read
so
it
I
again.
just inserted that as well, and then,
On the first come, first served basis, needed the words on a.
Yeah, after bus assignment, determine bus assignment on a first come, first served basis.
Sorry, Liz, I'm making you go all over the place. But those don't change anything that was read, so I'm confident that this first reading will work. So, could I then, well, we don't have to vote on the first reading, do we?
we do not.
Oh, so we don't have to vote on the first reading.
Consider it read.
All right, it has been read. So then what we would do next is we need to talk about the second reading and the third reading, when those are going to occur. We, of course, have a regularly scheduled meeting next Wednesday night. Dr. Burnham had suggested to me earlier today that maybe we could sneak one of these extremely quick meetings in maybe on Monday night, just to do the second read so that the final read could be on the, on our March 15th meeting. Is that something that will work? I'm getting,
That would work with me.
Yep.
Actually,
Yeah.
maybe now,
Mr.
too.
Schoenbrini? Tony, does that work for you?
And
Okay.
what would be the earliest time?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what,
I'm struggling to do earlier than 6:30.
All right, so 6:30?
6:30, that's fine. If that works for everybody, we will do the same thing, 6:30 on Monday evening, and just make it a second read. And I would like to read it out loud because this is a very important policy that people are concerned about. So I would do that. So if that is all set, then we have public comment. If there's anyone in the public that would like to comment. I am seeing no hands. So I am
Right.
guessing there is no public comment then. And then I would take, unless there's anything else, a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 7 PM.
And a second.
I'll second.
All right, and a roll call vote.
Mr. Beardmore,
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Schoenbrini,
Yes.
Mrs. Ashambo.
Yes. So Mr. Leighton had to run. So I thank everybody very much for their flexibility in trying to get this accomplished in a reasonably timely manner. So thank you, and we will see you Monday.
Thank you,
Have a
Carol.
good night.
All right, have a
Good
good evening. Thank you.